In this video, I'm going to show you the basics on how to finish drywall. This wall that you see here behind me was hung and finished by myself, and I'm going to show you step by step on how I got it to be a nice flat smooth surface like you see here. And if you're new to this channel, my name's Josh. This channel is all about DIY to save a ton of money, so be sure to subscribe, ring that bell so you get notification every time I release a new video, and hammer that like button for me. That's all I ask in return for making this video. So finishing drywall is an art form, but let me show you how I did it. I'm going to begin by taping the tapered joints first. When I say a tapered joint, this is the two factory edges of the drywall that have been finished with paper, and there's a little taper on each edge here, so it gives you a place to embed the tape, so it gives it a nice flat finish when it's done. So now the first thing we need to do is cut our tape to length for our joint. And as you can see, our joint is from this window over to this window. And first thing I need to do is take my knife. I'm going to clean it off first. And then I'm going to take my tape, which I keep it by my side using a tape holder. And now I'm going to place this back here. So I'm just going to pull up some tape and simply just lay it right where it's going to be installed at, like so. And it's going to give us a good length here. That looks pretty good. In order to cut it, just going to take my drywall knife, and then we're going to pull it and rip it. So now we got our tape that's going to be the same length of the joint we are taping. I'm now going to apply the mud over the joint. I'm going to be using a 6-inch knife like I mentioned earlier. So your first instinct, if you've never taped before or done any drywall work, is to get mud on your knife and place it over the joint like that. But that's not the fastest way of doing it. What I found that works best for me is take it and get it right on the edge of the knife like so, and then start a little bit on the upper side of the joint, come through and kind of rotate your knife and smear it at the same time like that. And don't be afraid to get liberal with the mud, because you need plenty of mud to do this properly. And then again, I'm going to load up my knife on just 1/2 of it, start here, just kind of roll it out, nice and easy. And it takes a little practice to get good at it. Now we're just going to smooth that mud out, just to get a good flat start. I'm now going to grab the piece of tape that we cut the length, and we're going to start by placing it right in the middle of that joint. And if you're having problems locating the joint, you can push in on your drywall, and you'll see it flex, and it's going to indicate the exact joint. So some areas, if you have it between two studs that are close, you won't be able to do that. But if you go to the 16 on center, you'll be able to see that very easy. So we're going to place the tape there first. And in order to place it, we start by just putting it lightly right here on the edge. Go about arm's length, and then we're just going to touch it right into the center of the joint. Just gently press it into place and make sure we stay right in the center of the joint. Now with the tape placed on the joint, we're going to start in the middle of the tape, and we're going to gently press it onto the wall, and keep your knife at a 45-degree angle here. We don't want to place it straight up and down or straight vertically. We want to keep a slight angle. And now just gently start by pressing it into that mud. The next swipe, press a little harder. And then on the other swipes, keep pressing a little bit harder. And the idea here is to flatten out the tape, get all the excess mud out from behind it, and clean it up as you go. So again, press and pull. And then clean up down here on the edges. So this side is complete. Now we do from here over on the other half. Again, nice gentle push. Next swipe a little harder. The next swipe a little harder. And now that joint is taped, And as you can see, it's really not that complicated. Be sure to allow the drywall mud to totally dry before moving on to the next coat, and remember that throughout the rest of this video. We're now going to move into the second coat, also known as blocking. Now with the blocking, we're going to be using the mud from the red lid drywall buckets, and this is the mid-weight, and we're going to be using an 8-inch knife, and this is where we're going to blend together the tape joints to give it more of a smooth surface. So this is going to take a good bit of drywall mud in comparison to the taping. First thing we're going to do is just clean the surface, make sure there's no humps or bumps of loose drywall in the way here. So we got it kind of smoothed out. And now when we load the mud onto our 8-inch knife, what I like to do, the technique I like to do is get some on the drywall knife and then just kind of taper the edge off like so. So that way when we spread it across the joint, it'll move more evenly. So we're going to start here at the end and apply a medium amount of pressure. Then simply just start applying the mud right to that joint. Again, adding just a medium amount of pressure at first. And we're going to get this going clear across this joint to where it's manageable. And then we're going to start smoothing it out. Just get a nice coat of mud on. Now that the mud is generally here on the joint, now what we need to do is just apply more pressure to the edge at the top, and then we're going to taper this top area down towards the middle of the joint. So we're going to apply more pressure to the upper side of this knife and go across the top, and again trying to shape it to blend similar to how we did the corner. As you can see, it's pushing it towards the center like so. And as you can see, it's starting to feather it out at the top. And now we're going to do the same to the bottom. Now we're going to apply more pressure to the bottom of the knife, and it's going to be kind of tilted towards the bottom so that it angles up towards the center of the coat. Now that we got our taper on each end of this coat, we're just going to go with a medium amount of pressure and our knife angled at about a 45, and we're just going to smooth that out. And now this is now blocked, and that's really all there is to the horizontal joints. Now that we got everything blocked with the second coat, we're going to move on to the third coat. The third coat is also known as skimming or the skim coat, and this is where we try to blend the block coat or second coat in with the flat part of the drywall for the final coat of mud before the sanding. So in order to do this, we're going to need a 12-inch knife, and with the 12-inch knife, we're going to hold it to where this end of it is going to overlap the middle of the block coat. And then this is going to skim right across like so. And the first thing we need to do, just like anything else, go through and we got to clean off any of the humps and bumps of loose drywall mud that might be stuck to the joint. And when it comes to the mud we're using, I'm using the same mud that I've been using for the block coat. It's the mid-weight, and with the mid-weight, I do have it watered down just a little more than what the block coat was, because when you do your skimming, it's going to be a very thin coat of mud that goes across the joint. So we're first going to load up our 12-inch knife, similar to how we've been loading up the knife before. Just a little bit of mud. You don't want to overload it here. And we're going to go right over where I just mentioned. Nice thin coat of mud like so. About like that. And we're just going to keep loading this joint clear across till I get to the other window. And then you can also work just about a sheet of drywall worth at a time, whatever you're comfortable with, until you get your technique down. So I'm going to do that first right across the top. I'm now going to do the same thing to the bottom part of the joint. We're going to go right across, kind of blending in the middle of the block with the overlap. Again, we're looking for a nice thin coat of mud here. Now that we got the mud loosely on the wall, we're now going to shape it. And with the shaping process here, you don't really put pressure on one side or the other of the knife. We're literally trying to wipe it smooth and flat. So from the edge of the fresh mud to the middle of the joint. So we're going to start here, and we're just going to keep our knife flat, just smooth it out. And something really important you got to watch for here, if you get any debris or dirt in this coat, you got to smooth it out because, again, this is the final coat before sanding. So if you get a chunk in here and you get a streak, you need to make sure you get that out now. So that looks really good, really smooth, really thin. Now we're going to step down here and do the bottom part of this joint. All right, that looks really good. It's skimmed. Now, just like all of the other coats, we need to allow this to dry for about 24 hours using this standard mud. There is fast drying mud, but I typically always use the standard. So now after this dries, we'll be ready to sand. But again, make sure it's totally dry first. And if you do have just any little wrinkle when you have your skim coat finished, it's okay if it's very small because that'll knock off very easy with sandpaper. I got a little one right here if you take a look. So that little one right there will sand out with no problem. As you can see, it's very minute to the rest of the coat. It looks really good. I'm going to show you how to sand the walls. So the biggest important part of sanding is making sure you have a well-lit room that you're trying to sand. So I like to carry a light with me so that way we can shine it up the edge of the wall so you can see all the imperfections while you're sanding. You don't want to think you got everything sanded well, you shine a light, then you see all these imperfections. So a well-lit area is very important. So I'm going to begin by taking my pole sander and sanding this part here that we finished throughout this video. And let me go step by step on how to do this. So I'm first going to turn my light on so I can see well and shine it accordingly. Now that I can see the imperfections in the drywall mud, I'm just going to start with my pole sander and sand where all the joints are, where all the drywall mud is primarily located, and just try to smooth it out and get all of the imperfections out that you can. So as you sand, just keep inspecting to make sure you don't over sand, because once you get the imperfections out, and if you notice a big imperfection, don't try to get it all the way out in one shot. You're going to have to touch that up with drywall mud, wait for it to dry, then finish sanding. But as of right now, we can easily sand this. So we're just going and sanding like so, and inspecting and making sure that we're going to have a nice smooth flat surface. And this is when you'll be thankful you used the mid-weight mud, because if you use that full strength mud, it doesn't sand near this easy. And then right here where it blends from the drywall to the joint that we finished, you want to give it a little extra attention because that's where it has to blend together. And something really important that you need to remember, you don't want to sand really hard on the paper, the drywall, because it'll make it fray, and when you paint it, it's going to raise up that paper, and it's going to be something you'll have to sand out after you paint if you over sand on the drywall. Had that happen to me one time, and it was really a pain to fix. So you don't want to do that. So make sure you don't hit the edge of this paper too hard. And then after we sand our whole joint and got everything smooth, we're just going to lightly go across the whole piece of drywall and maybe throw a couple swipes across these screws that we patched just to knock off any debris that could be on here. And that's really it with the pole sanding on the flats of the wall. Now, after we go over it with the pole sander, we are going to switch to our sanding sponge. And this is where I like to actually take the light and shine up the wall like so. So if we notice anything that's real obvious, like right here, could get a little extra attention. So we're going to sand that out. And as you can see, that little groove that's right there is now going to disappear. And again, you definitely want to make sure you wear your mask and glasses here. This is just for a demonstration on how to do the sanding. So right here on these edges, you just want to give that a little extra attention if it needs it. And now after we got that joint sanded and it looks really good, I don't see any grooves in it, that's what you want. If you would like to see how I'm going to mud and tape all of this drywall, check out this video. It'll help you out.